Hi, everyone. My name is Tim Selden, and today is the 29th of April, 2025. And this is yet another weekly meeting of our Finding the Perfect Match webcast. My name is Tim Selden. I'm president of the Montessori Foundation, which is an independent school and public and charter Montessori school consulting group. And with me is my colleague, Clint Lausch, who is the president and founder of AIMS, which in my opinion is got to be one of the very best school marketing solutions that I found anywhere. And I've worked with the best. So Clint, let you say a few words and introduce yourself.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Tim. Thank you. Yeah, and we have what I like to phrase as all-in-one software from marketing, admissions, really handling everything all up to the point of getting those students enrolled, even collecting tuition. So I feel like a lot of schools don't know that yet, but yeah, we can kind of do everything from that first ad click all the way through. And today, as we're thinking about today's going to be quick wins, right? And it's like, okay, what are those marketing initiatives that we can implement very quickly, high impact, low effort to get people interested or re-interested. And I will say, having software is going to make several of these initiatives a lot easier and a lot faster. So again, whether you're using our software or somebody else's software, some of this stuff does take software. Some of this is just hitting the phones and making some phone calls. That's one option, but we'll talk about some other strategies that, with a little bit of tech involved, we can do some pretty cool things to potentially re-engage, engage or re-engage families, even at this time of year, right? So I know many of you are already done or finishing up your admission season, but I think it's worth mentioning because on our last call that we had, and I'm happy to share this again, is that this is still prime time for families looking for schools. And we indicated that last time through the Google Trends chart. Some of you may have seen that, some of you may not have seen that. So maybe it's good to bring that up. So even though if this doesn't align with your current admission season, I think it's very important to know that parents are still searching. So I'll pull that up while we're talking, just in terms of thinking of, hey, are families still even searching right now? Is it too late in the year? And the short answer is no. It's actually still, like I said, still prime time. And let me share my screen here with you all. There we go. So for those that didn't see this in our last call, let me pull this 12 months. Yeah, so we're right here. So what is this graph? And again, for those that saw this last time, bear with us here as we go through this again. But I think it's always good to take a look at. And this just shows a trend chart over time of families looking for schools and their interest. And that interest is gauged by search volume through Google. So right now we are kind of end of here, right to here. So the point of showing this is that, yes, we're going to start taking a dip here in, towards the middle end of May. And as we get into Memorial Day, 4th of July, and then it's going to pick right back up. So now is still a really good time to capture families that are actually searching and then preparing yourself for the summer. It's crazy to think, oh, we're in May, next thing you know, it'll be 4th of July, and we're getting ramped up for the fall. But having some campaigns prepared, because the interest in schools still really ramps up over the summer. So end of June, beginning of July is kind of our valley. And then through August, there's a lot of search volume happening. So now I know we're talking about search volume, and you might think Google search ads, and yes, that's one of the strategies, but that's not it. We could do a couple things. But I would love to just maybe throw it out there for the group. We have a decent sized group today. Has anybody that's here maybe feeling like, hey, I need to fill some seats? Has anybody engaged in very strategic initiatives? They're like, hey, we need to, because usually what I'm hearing, let me just take a step back. What I'm hearing right now from schools that working with using our software, it's like, okay, we've had our admission season. Now it's like, we have to fill that high school, or our early childhood is a little bit light. How do we also target those areas? Is anybody doing that right now, looking at areas they need to target and engage in any specific initiatives they wanted to share or have a question about? Matt, you had said kindergarten for you, not sure how to target? Or out of curiosity, are you running any sort of ads right now?
Yes, we're running mainly meta ads and we're seeing some traction, but that's kind of in line with what we've always done. We're in a little bit of a state of lack of knowledge paralysis.
Okay.
I can tell you that what we call this 11th hour marketing. And what I would typically do is, one, Facebook is usually pretty good to make the phone ring if you target it correctly. So I know, Clint, you have very specific strategies that you know to increase the effectiveness of Facebook ads. Instagram seems to also be a very effective way if you can produce the right reels on Instagram. A lot of the young parents these days pay that. The other thing I would tend to do is some direct mail. I mean, the postcard companies can be very helpful to do that. And then, of course, you can do events, you can network through groups of parents. You can go on Facebook discussion groups of parents who live in your area, or moms groups, whatever it is. There's always parents who are beginning to say, oh my God, the teacher that I wanted my kid to be in public school isn't available, or the school just feels like something isn't working right. I'm worried about it. And there's typically last minute people that we can identify and reach out to.
So Tim, I want to mention two things. One is you mentioned direct mail. What are some things that we can do right now? There are some questions in here, about, is direct mail still applicable and useful? Does anybody have any thoughts? Is anybody doing direct mail and seeing success with their direct mail, out of curiosity? I'm good, because I'm sharing my screen. I'm going to put direct mail on here, so I do want to talk about it, and I think it's a really interesting topic. So
My
go
theory is
ahead.
it's been used so rarely that it's beginning to become new again.
Tim, I could not agree with you more about that. Everybody's so digital, which you should be. The majority of your ads or your marketing spend for recruiting families should be on the digital side. You're going to get the most bang for your buck. However, that doesn't mean we should dismiss direct mail. Now, here's where I think we should dismiss direct mail. I don't think you should do blanket mailings anymore. You don't have to do that. You don't have to say, go buy a list from some list broker who's going to give you a 5-mile, 10-mile radius of families. That's going to be a lot of money, and that's probably a waste of money. What you can do now is a couple things. So one of the big things that, not that necessarily I'm a huge proponent, I'm a huge proponent of it, because the data is telling us we need to be, which is we want to be in as many places as possible. We need more touch points than ever with families. So where I like direct mail is to complement digital, right? So if you're running a meta campaign, we'll come back to you for kindergarten, right? Now with kindergarten, by chance, are you doing any sort of events or anything like that right now? Or is it just like, hey, come book a tour?
We're trying to drive towards tours. We don't have any big events planned. We're also I don't know about anybody else, but we're within 3 weeks of the end of the school year. So it's a little bit late to even try and get an event going because of all the other things happening.
So what I'm seeing work right now in regards to getting, so when you think about running ads, and I'm going to tie this back to direct mail. When you think about running ads, you think about your call to action. Okay, come book a tour. Okay, that's one option. Another option, let's go to the other end of the spectrum, is come for an event on this date at this time. I will say those types of campaigns typically get better response because there's a deadline, right? But to your point, Matt, we're at the end of the year, right? So pulling together an event gonna be a little bit difficult. Kind of a hybrid that I'm seeing work across a variety of campaigns, and I've done this a lot before, but especially when it's like you want to maybe just try to get kind of more and quicker, which is, I'll put this down here, is I call them theme-based tours. So that's like your walk-in Wednesdays, your touring Tuesdays, or even Zoom info sessions. So so when I say Zoom info sessions, I've seen some schools do like they call them coffee sessions, even though they can be virtual. And they can also be very niche. So like, a financial aid info session, an athletics info session, a kindergarten info session. Okay. So I list all of this because, like I said, at one end you have, come for a tour. And then the other end of the spectrum, you have your come to an event. And I'm saying this falls kind of right in between. So this is making sense in my head, but I was probably not visually coming together, but nonetheless, that's an option, which are, if you're still running campaigns for tours, potentially putting something together if you feel like you have the capacity, but it's like a hybrid, because you could put it on your website, you could put it in an ad with like countdown timers and dates associated. Hey, the next walk-in Wednesday tour is how many days away? In general, I just see those campaigns produce higher conversion rates. So you can get some more in faster. I'm also seeing info sessions being attended really, really well right now. So while holding an event itself in person can be quite a haul, right? Getting people together, putting everything together, you could whip up a Zoom info session pretty quickly. So that could be something to consider if you're looking to, especially if you're looking to target very specific families. Now I want to tie this back to direct mail. So let's just say we're going to do a Zoom info session, because I'm working with a school and we literally just wrapped up they're doing an info session every single month, and they just wrap those up. Complementing the digital campaign with direct mail, but also, now this is not a quick win, but I just want to point out print. So the primary budget and campaign is being used on Meta and Google, but then they're also looking at local print and doing direct mail for that campaign as well. Now I don't want to focus on print, because print is still a shotgun approach. Direct mail, I would use your own list. Ideally, you ideally want to use your own list if you have that data. I look at it almost as like retargeting. So just as we like to do retargeting with digital, meaning somebody visits your site, they leave your site, and then you run an ad to them because they were on your site. If you have their contact information in your database, I would run direct mail just to them, as well as running ads to them as well. So using a multi-channel approach to retarget those families that are already in your database. And it could be from the past year, past 2 years, whatever makes sense. So that's where I like to use direct mail, which is a very, not necessarily the shotgun approach, but we'll call the sniper approach of picking out exactly who we're going to be sending to. Is that helpful? Does that make sense in terms of direct mail? So I don't like to spend a lot of money there, but and we don't. I will say we don't have a lot of schools doing this right now. But our platform, just to throw it out there, we specifically added in direct mail actually as a digital campaign, where in conjunction with your Facebook campaigns, you can put postcards in there as well that has a QR code, and then you can track. So that's the other thing I wanted to talk about is whatever you do, especially if you do direct mail, make sure you are tracking. Because usually most do not, right? You send it out, you hope to get a response, but we can use QR codes now and even dedicated URLs and pages. So I always want to know, look, did this work or didn't it work? And having some QR codes or dedicated URLs can help give you some insight, for next year. Say, yeah, we did direct mail, but man, nobody came from direct mail. So that's how I would use it. Questions on that? Is anybody here using direct mail?
I can tell you that I have used direct mail several times over the last year, and it's generally been okay. I mean, you don't want to send out something that looks like the standard postcard. It's got to be much more appealing than that. So there are lots of companies like many companies that send them out, but don't use their standard stuff. Put your own photograph. Think
Yeah.
of an ad that's compelling. You've got to grab their attention in the first second. And some of my favorites are, picture of a group of kids, and there's a blank spot. We're looking for one kid to join Sam and Jones. We have one spot left in the kindergarten class, or
I like that.
come see how good a school can be, or where thinking goes to school, or our students are the best spokesman. Come hear them speak for themselves, things like that.
I love it. Love it.
Something I've done last summer up outside of Detroit that I thought was pretty neat. This was done like in August, is they literally did a dog and pony show. They had pony rides, they had free ice cream, they had like a little train ride. It was basically things that you could just rent for the day. And they did like a little free carnival, and they must have had 300 people show up. It was great. And I know they picked up 20 kids from it.
Love it. I'm going to come back to ads real quick, or I'm going to circle back to ads here in a second, because we could talk about ads for a while. And ads are one of those things where, yeah, sure, you could get something up very quickly. I think it matters what is your call to action there to depend on how quickly somebody engages. But I want to talk about some other quick wins that won't cost anything, and I'd love to get feedback on who might be doing this. But is anybody doing right now, like what I like to call a reactivation campaign, where you have a database of families that they came into your database at some point through the year? It could have been 6 months ago, it could have been 6 days ago. But they haven't moved forward in the process for whatever reason. Maybe you haven't heard from them, you're not really sure, but nonetheless, you have this list. Maybe it's 50 people, 100 people, 300 people. Is there anybody here running what's like a reactivation campaign, is what I like to call it, where you run a dedicated email campaign and text campaign to get them to re-engage? Anybody doing that currently? So let me scroll down here. So this is one of the first things, if you're looking for a quick win right now, this is probably my favorite, which is, again, we'll call it a reactivation campaign. So it's going to be email and text-based, where we are re-engaging past family leads. Does anybody have a database that they feel they go back to, or you don't have a database? We'd love to get thoughts on this, because whenever I bring this up, I usually hear, well, oh yeah, we have a database, but we just haven't emailed them in a while, or we're not emailing them. Just wanted to get a sense of, has anybody tried doing this yet?
I mean, I do follow-up emails with people in this situation, or follow-up, communication, like basically, are you still interested? Or we've started sending contracts, Even if there are spaces, I kind of try to make it sound like they're in demand or, 2 spaces left, but not in the way, not with SMS in that way. I'm not sure how that works.
Yeah, I mean, you need a text system, something to do the texting. Everybody opens text these days, so I like doing texting. But what I would do is try to make this at the minimum a 5-part campaign. Right? So let's break this out. So campaign. We'll say email number 1, and Amanda, exactly like you said. Email number 1 is, are you still interested? And then I'll be honest, I've seen great responses just from that question. It's the simplest email or text. Hey, been a while. Just wanted to see, are you still interested? Coming up at the end of admission season, just wanted to see where you're at. Right now, you may or may not get a response. If you do get a response, you'll probably just manually take them out of that list. Email number 2. This could be like an FAQ email about admissions. Hey, if you want to talk about the admissions process, this could include maybe like financial aid questions, deadlines. Email number 3. Like to have testimonials, alumni spotlights, so something I might want to get them excited. Email number 4. This can be something programmatic that's unique about the school. Email number 5. Deadline announcement. So I love running these types of campaigns because it doesn't really cost anything. You could probably crank out these emails in an afternoon, and then you can set them up. Again, you need some software, whether it's ours, whether it's like a Constant Contact or a MailChimp. They can all, we can all execute something like this. It's just a matter of segmenting your database. And yeah, so I'll respond to a couple of the comments. Yeah, getting your having your database segmented properly is probably the one thing you just want to make sure you have. Like these are the right families that we're emailing. But then I would launch this, and I would probably email these every few days, not necessarily a week apart, because next thing you know, it's a month and a half later. So I would email these probably a few days apart and run that campaign. Amanda, you said getting people to reply in general, regardless of yes or no, is particularly difficult these days. I agree. It can be. That's also why I'm not saying you're doing this or anybody I just mentioned, one shot, it's usually not going to do it. Like when I say, let's run a review campaign. Hey, we really want to get reviews for the school. We're going to ask, 10, 15 parent ambassadors to write reviews. If you send out a review request type of email, you will get nothing. But if you do a second email or third email, those extra nudges, you're not going to get 100%, but maybe you get 30%, 40% reply, something like that. And I would look for the same here. Not everybody's going to reply, but if you get a certain percentage, it's probably more than you would have if you didn't do something like this. So I think a reactivation campaign, I always put at the high priority level, because the effort is pretty low. There's pretty much zero cost. And the only thing that could happen is you get somebody, even one person, to re-engage that wouldn't have potentially engaged. So there's only a positive scenario that can come out of this.
Couldn't agree more. So 11th hour marketing, what else can you do? Dog and pony shows, re-engagement campaigns. How about farmers markets? A lot of schools that I know either go to school fairs or they go to a weekly community market that might be going on. Anyone do anything like that?
Takers.
David, oh, well.
Amanda, you had a great question here, which is at what point is it advisable to consider a lead non-responsive? Great question. So it could be whatever you want to consider it. I would say 3 to 5 outreach messages where you outreach and you don't get a response. So here's what I typically like to do. And again, this is where you do need some sort of software to do this. What you can do very easily is, okay, let's say you run this campaign, right? You decide to run this campaign. You could wait till the end here. Let's say it's at the end of email number 5. What you can do is you can go into some of these software platforms and say, run what do they call it? Disengagement campaign, whatever they call it, where you can actually automatically segment your audience for anybody who hasn't opened your email or text over the past 5 sends. So let's say you've sent 5 emails. There are going to be people there that haven't even opened. And what you can do is, I like sending those people an email, like, hey, if you're receiving this email, it's likely because you haven't opened the previous ones. Just, if you want to keep receiving emails from me, just reply yes. Otherwise, I'll take you off the list. So you could do something like that, where, and you may not remove them from the database, but maybe you just don't keep them inside your engaged, or you put a tag on them. Like, if they don't reply after this, tag them as unresponsive. So I think it's good at some point to say unresponsive, but I also like to give it one more shot at the end, which says, I'm going to remove you if you don't tell me you want to stay on here. Usually that gets people to take action. Cool. Yeah, so I made a couple other notes here about some other ones. Let me see. Yeah, okay. So I was talking with a consultant recently, and he was working with a school, and he literally sat down with ambassadors, admission directors, and he said, we're all sitting down and making phone calls until somebody picks up. So the part of reactivation, there's also a phone call, which doesn't sound to be the most fun sometimes to make calls, but if you have, let's think about our reactivation campaign. If we have a list of people who we've connected in one way or another over the past year, and just picking up the phone and giving them a call, and maybe they pick up, maybe they don't, and then the next day or a couple days later, you give them a call again. Sometimes it might take 5 or 7 calls. But the consultant I was talking with said, we literally just sat down, and until somebody said no, we were going to keep calling. And he said it worked amazingly to get people re-engaged. So something, life gets in the way, whatever it is. Let's not forget about the ability to maybe set aside an hour, pull some people in, grab some coffee, and just start making some phone calls. So not the most high tech, but effective. Has anybody done, I'll ask, has anybody done that where you just pick up the phone, give them a call again as part of your maybe long-term follow-up, maybe not initial follow-up, but just giving them a call? Yeah, now you've done it, cool. So we want to put that out there as a quick win. Let's talk more about ads now. So let's talk about advertising. So the nice part about Facebook and Google advertising is that by the time you're done this Zoom meeting, you could have an ad up and running if you wanted to. I talked about this again in our previous sessions about what I'm seeing work the best right now. If you want, so what I'm seeing work the best is, especially, and I think that, Matt, this goes into your type of campaign as well, where it's like, hey, we want to target kindergarten. Has anybody here tried Facebook lead forms? Is anybody using lead forms on Facebook? You're using lead forms. Are they working for you?
We just tried one for the first time,
How'd it go?
maybe last Friday.
No kidding. Is it
So we're
still, is it still
waiting.
running?
It is
Okay,
running right now. We have generated 0 leads.
0 leads, okay. Well, look, if you ever wanted to review it, happy to jump on and review it, just because I say, I'm seeing them work really, really well right now, especially from a volume perspective. So typically the pros with lead forms is that you will get more leads. The potential downside is because it is so easy to fill out those forms, you can get maybe the families just aren't right fit, right? So you could spend some time calls, follow-ups with families that aren't the right fit. But until that's not always the case, but just be aware of that. And so typically what I recommend is, you start with the least amount of friction possible. You bring in, you get the top of that funnel starting to fill up. And then if you feel like, okay, we need more right fit families, you can add some more friction in that process. But I will say, Meta lead forms are doing really, really well. Now, in those cases, Matt, just to ask, are you looking specifically for kindergarten families in those ads?
We're going a bit broader. We're showing in the ads younger children, but we're really just looking in general. We're not trying to close off the other grade levels where we have space either.
So what would be very interesting to try, one of the suggestion I would give is, even if you want to keep that running and just split off into a separate campaign of just calling out, hey families, look, hey kindergarten families, hey preschool families, something like that. So why I suggest that is for 2 reasons. One is Facebook is pretty much saying, like, you worry about the creative, we'll find your audience for you. So if you can be very specific about who you're looking for, Facebook actually does a better job of finding more families that fit who you're looking for. So if you are calling out, so when I was talking before about we were running those info sessions, that school was specifically looking for middle school and high school families. And what we did was we didn't even change anything with the targeting. Now we're using AI targeting through the platform that I have, and I think that helps. But the other thing that also helps is in the ads, we're saying, hey, middle school and high school families, we've got this info session and here's what it is. So if you could have a campaign calling out specific kindergartners, families of kindergartners, or looking for a kindergartner, and then you have a lead form, because that lead is being captured directly on Facebook, Facebook has that data now, and they can better optimize the campaign typically to find more families who are responding to the kindergarten ad. So that's where I've seen it be really successful, where you call out the audience, you get people to fill that in. As long as that audience looks good, Facebook should start optimizing that the longer it runs. So I would look at Meta lead forms, and I would say calling out specific age groups or grades in the copy. Along those lines, if you're not running Google ads, I would recommend Google search ads. I literally just got off a call with a school this morning where we actually did not see the volume that we were getting from Meta, but everybody coming from Google ads, they were actually starting an application and requesting an application. So volume lower, but much, much higher intent. So if you're not running Google ads can be one of those that you can be up there tomorrow paying for keywords that families are looking for, private schools near me, best Montessori schools around Philadelphia, whatever it might be, and driving them to a page. Now, again, we like to send them to an admissions center page, which, it'll look something like this, which is, how do you want to connect with us? Do you want to join a tour? Do you want to schedule a call with admissions? Do you want to start the application process? And a lot of those that we're seeing come from Google are saying they'd like to start the application process. Now, Matt, I know you're running ads. If anybody else is running ads, anybody doing Google ads, seeing success with them? Here's one thing one of the questions I get a lot with advertising is what is the cost per action? Whatever our action is? What is the cost to get an application? What is the cost to get a tour? What I was seeing this morning from the Google ads is that it's costing roughly $375 about to get one application. Okay, so if you're thinking about a budget, you could say, okay, if we had $1,000, okay, we might spend $1,000 and get 3 applications from that. Now, working backwards, that typically might mean maybe maybe it is a direct application, but usually that might mean, okay, might be 6 to 8 tours, something along those lines if we were to reverse engineer that. On Meta lead forms, I'm seeing leads as low as $29 per lead. And that means they're filling out this type of form, but they're actually doing it directly on Facebook. So they're getting something like requesting call, tour, something like that. Request more info. Right, so you can fill the top of your funnel much quicker this way. And I would say if you have somebody, whether it's yourself or somebody on the team, to call those new family leads when they come in, that can help convert them into a tour, an inquiry, an application. So that's another quick win. So again, if it were me right now and you say, hey, I want to target middle schoolers or going into middle school, I would try to do a Meta and a Google ad. And I would use lead forms and I would be specifically calling out the age groups in the targeted campaign. And if you have multiple, like again, I was on a call right before this and it was like, who do you want to target? Well, we want to target early childhood and high school. They're on both ends of the spectrum. Well, I would put those in separate campaigns with separate lead forms so that you can have the messaging direct to those particular families. So if you have the budget, this is something I would do right away. And then my next course of action would be ideally going through my database and doing a reactivation campaign with emails, text, and even phone calls. Let's see what else we got here. Yeah, those were my main. Those were my main ones. I saw Tim jumped off. Anybody else doing something here that we didn't talk about so far? Either that you've tried or that's working? All right, that was the correct amount of awkward silence. Matt, I saw you earlier. You had said, retargeting and warm leads, keeping warm leads in the forefront this summer. Is that primarily through advertising? Or is there anything specific you're doing there with, not to catch you right when you're eating, but anything specific you're doing this summer for retargeting?
So I will say, to share with the entire group my story. We have an alarmingly small kindergarten class, but a rising kindergarten target list that's almost double the size of usual. It's like nobody had kids this year, but everybody had kids next year. So we're creating an email campaign and trying to create some other soft marketing to send to this list to keep them warm and engaged so that they don't float anywhere else, to ensure that we have a full class the next year. That kind of thing. So we're trying to develop some an automated, almost like an email newsletter that highlights maybe our 4 or 5 biggest selling points, so that they stay involved and engaged until they get to our open house. That kind of thing.
That's great. Is that a list that you already had internally, or was that like a purchase list?
It's an internal list based on, we always get kids, we don't have a pre-K. So we routinely will get parents that are interested in the following year and they come to
Right.
our open house for the following year. So we keep that list. In the past, before I arrived, we did not do a lot other than maybe a phone call every 3 months. But I found this year we probably lost two because they didn't stay warm enough. And because the list is so robust for us, so unusually robust, I want to make sure that they all stay with us until it's time to fill out the application, so we can keep them, so to speak.
Makes sense. Love it.
Yeah, very good sense, Matthew. Keep them, it's all about relationships.
Well, Tim, I don't know if you had any other thoughts. You know, what I suggested in here or what we went through was the reactivation campaign, talking about phone calls. So sometimes just picking up the phone, you know, once every other day, even just to keep reaching out to people. And then we talked about what's working right now with advertising. Meta lead forms are working really well for targeted ads, Google search ads, bottom of the funnel, intent based. Do you have any other ideas or things that you've seen work very well in terms of, hey, you know, it's reaching to the end of the year here. If we needed to get some more bodies in the seats, what would you do?
Well, yeah, the thing I mentioned that the school outside of Detroit did was really a shocker to me. It was an open house, but they had entertainment and food. And they made a big deal where any parent could come, not just to see the school, but to eat the ice cream and take the rides and pet the petting zoo animals. Man, did they bring people out. And it was really shocking how well attended it was and how successful it was.
I will say, for whatever reason, at least in my area here, I feel like that is very common in the fall, like October, like the fall festival. I remember that was one of the first things we did with looking for my daughter's school, which was the fall festival, the games. You know, everybody was out. Like, yes, there was current families there, but it was mainly for the community, and I extremely well attended. I would imagine they did very, very well from something like that. But I think you bring up an interesting point where that probably is very common in the fall, but not so common right now. So that could be a big standout, you know, the big event at the school. Now, obviously on one end, planning for it is a little bit more difficult, or at least that you at least would have had to have it planned. But it's a great idea to really stand out when nobody else is doing it.
Yep.
I love that idea.
Well, it looks like we may have covered everything early. Does anyone have anything else they want to add or ask? If not, let's wrap her up for the week. I'd say this has been a good session. I thank everyone for coming. We ought to mention that, again, if you haven't looked into it, I think Ames, if you're not already working with Clint, is really worth your time. Ames is a marketing agency, it's software, it's advice, it's doing all kinds of things. From my experience as a longtime head of school, that really, really leverages time and energy. And I just could not recommend it more strongly. Should you need a school consultant to help you with board retreats or search for a new head or institutional assessment or preparing for accreditation, Montessori Foundation works with Montessori schools, it works with Catholic schools, it works with independent schools, and we work globally. So we're also here to help. And finally, if you're a Montessori school, Ames and the Montessori Compass people are working in collaboration to create something called Montessori Growth, which is about to launch, I believe, on Thursday, which is a combined two software solutions made into one, which is incredibly powerful in a Montessori school or a school that wants to track children's growth independently, as opposed to a standard student information system where you're basically tracking homework assignments and grades. A little different approach, but if you're into that kind of mastery learning approach, Montessori Compass is incredibly powerful. We highly recommend it. That's it for me. Any last comments from any of our attendees? Matthew, Amanda, anyone else? Well, thanks for being here. We'll see you hopefully next week.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.